Today on Spiritual Awakening Radio, Surat Shabd Yoga, Inner Sound Meditation Practice. Hazrat Inayat Khan of the Sufis once said, "The person who is in tune with the universe becomes like a radio receiver, through which the voice of the universe is transmitted." The following is from Julian P. Johnson's great spiritual classic, Path of the Masters. This creative current, filling all space, may be likened to the electromagnetic waves of the radio. The great creative current flows outwards and downwards to create, govern, and sustain all regions. It passes out from this region somewhat like the radio emanations going forth from a great broadcasting station. It is the audible life stream, the most important factor in the system of the Masters. This stream permeates the entire system of universes. A thing of great importance to us is that the music of this ever-flowing current, the stream of life, can be heard by a real master and also by his or her students who have advanced even a little on the path. This is from Sant Satguru. The subject of Shabda, the sound current, is such that we cannot do justice to it by discursive reasoning. All that can be said is that Shabd or Shabad implies the power of God that has created and is sustaining the various grand divisions, and subdivisions of the vast creation of God. It is a current from the ocean of consciousness and is characterized by sound vibration, or in other words, it is a live and active principle which, emanating from God, is enlivening all creation. It is the instrument with which God creates, controls, and sustains his vast universe. It acts as a lifeline between the Creator and his creation, and serves as a golden bridge between the two. The divine currents, like the ethereal waves of a radio, are spread out in the atmosphere in all directions of the compass, giving out delectable strains of music. We, however, cannot catch the ethereal vibrations and listen to the divine melody until we get in tune with the infinite by adjusting our mental apparatus. Therefore, we become etherealized more and more as we come in tune with the heavenly music. Shabd, or the Word, is the connecting link between God and humanity, said Kripal Singh. The vibrations of this sound are too fine to be either audible or visible to the material eyes and ears, said Hazrat Inayat Khan. In his great spiritual classic, The Mysticism of Sound, Volume 2 of the Sufi Message series. Yet, as the masters and mystics often point out, there is another kind of hearing and another kind of seeing. The eyes and ears of the soul, the spiritual senses, can be developed. There is light coming from beyond the darkness, and there is music coming from beyond the silence, for those who have ears to hear, those who desire to meditate and uncover the wonders of inner space for themselves. This is from Huzur Maharaj Raisalagram, from Radhasoami Mat Prakash, a great spiritual classic of the Radhasoami tradition, which means light on the teachings of the Lord of the Soul, or Supreme Being, Radhasoami Mat Prakash. The sound heard internally is a current which has originally emanated from the Supreme Being, and is the means not only of concentrating the will, but also of raising the spirit entity or soul to the source from which it emanated. The method for taking back the spirit entity or soul to its supreme source is first to concentrate at the eye focus, the third eye center, and next to commence its journey homewards by attending to the internal sound, or in other words, by riding the life or sound current which has originally emanated from the Supreme Source, a passage from Radhasoami Mat Prakash by Hazur Maharaj Vaisalagram of the Radhasoami faith. Speaking of this yoga of the Audible Life stream, or the yoga of the word, the yoga of the logos, reversing the process, the soul tracing its steps back again to the Creator. Transcendental hearing, important points about inner sound meditation practice. One of the Sikh gurus, Guru Angad, in a verse of mystic poetry, put it this way: seeing without eyes, hearing without ears, walking without feet, working without hands, uttering God's name without tongue, and dying while living, is truly accepting God's will. This is from a guru in the Kabir Dharam Das lineage by the name of Prakash Mani Sahib, who said, "The eternal truth, Sat, or eternal word, is hidden in every being. Without the Satguru, without the Master, it does not become known. That eternal sound is within everyone, but dormant. One has to awaken it with love, devotion, recitation of the name, and meditation. That sound is unceasing and unfathomable, and is full of bliss." This is from Edward Salim Michael, his great spiritual classic called The Law of Attention, Nada Yoga, or Sound Meditation and the Way of Inner Vigilance. When meditating with this nada, this inner mystic sound, it is essential that the devotee always seek and follow the particular aspect of it that is most subtle and ultra in pitch, as well as in brilliance. Even when the sound becomes very shrill and loud in moments of deep concentration, he or she must not be tempted to be satisfied with it merely because it is sharp and resonant. He should relentlessly attempt to rise further and further into ever more subtle spheres of its mysterious, invisible kingdom. Edward Salim Michael, a mystic of the inner sound. Kirpal Singh wrote in his book Spiritual Elixir, "You will have more sounds than one, but you have to stick to that of the big bell, a conch shell, thunder, drum beat, a violin, and the flute, which are the higher types of sounds, and leave the rest." That's an interesting sentence, giving you some idea of the sounds we're talking about here today when it comes to Surat Shabd Yoga. There are many possible inner sounds one could hear that are cricket-like sounds, humming sounds, and so on, but here Kirpal Singh identifies certain sounds that are more advanced, that will pull the soul further above, whereas other sounds might not do that. Big bell or ringing sound or ringing tone, conch shell, thunder, drums or drum beat, violin, and flute or flute-like sounds, violin-like sounds, thunder-like sounds, bell-like sound. Not necessarily literally a bell, but something like a bell, something like thunder, something like a conch shell, a violin, or flute, in an altered state, meditative sort of way. Below is some material from Shiv Brat Lal, Maharishi Mehi, Swami Sant Ji, and Swami Vyasanand about inner sound meditation, useful points from rare writings of Sant Mat that may benefit some by providing detailed guidance about some aspect of this practice of Surat Shabd Yoga. That's why we're here. That's why I do this program, to make this lesser-known information available to those who need it in this ongoing radio satsang. Shiv Brat Lal, disciple of Hazur Maharaj Rai Salagram, once said, "Various sorts of sound currents reverberate in the human system from which the initiate has to pick up the right one and listen to it. Otherwise he will go astray and lose his equipoise. The practical guru forewarns his disciple and directs which sound to listen to and which one to discard. In Surat Shabd Yoga, we pay attention to certain sounds, as Kirpal Singh mentioned. But there are other sounds too, and we don't really need to pay so much attention to those, the humming and the crickets and other lower sounds, in other words. Swami Vyasanand says only the central sound has the power to attract the consciousness to the center and carry the soul to the center of a higher realm. Other illusory material sounds do not have that magnetism to attract the consciousness to higher realms. So certain spiritual sounds pull the soul up, but other sounds that people may hear, quite often crickets are cited as one of those inner sounds, don't really do that. They may be supernatural, they may be coming from beyond the physical realm, but are lower kinds of sounds. So in other words, Surat Shabd Yoga is not just about hearing any old sound, but focusing on certain spiritual sounds in meditation, those sounds that have been identified as being productive to focus upon with our attention. Certain sounds that elevate the soul, that lead the soul further above. The masters teach that the world, indeed many realms, are illusion, and that on the inner planes there are many reflections or copies of higher realities. There are phenomena that can imitate or mimic spiritual experiences. There are even realms that to some extent might appear to be heavens or copies of Sachkhand, the spiritual realm. A hall of mirrors, a matrix, a labyrinth, astral flypaper. In this world, there is the illusion of a master, a meat-eating guru offering instruction and initiation, but also who says ethics don't matter. The illusion of having a spiritual teacher. You have a teacher, but they mislead you instead of lead you or provide the proper guidance. The illusion of a guru. There is the illusion of satsang, the illusion of enlightenment. One can stare at a bright light or contemplate the flame of a candle and then close one's eyes in a darkened room and continue to see a kind of photo-like retinal image of that candle. Some of you probably have done that in the past. An optical illusion of inner light is what that is. Some electronic devices and electrical appliances generate white noise, humming sounds, or high-frequency ringing tones and overtones. These, to some extent, can mimic inner spiritual sounds, the illusion of hearing the sound current. I've had that happen before. I was meditating once, and heard this high-frequency tone, and then I realized it was coming from an old refrigerator I had at the time, not from within. So one must be very present and aware and pay close attention to things, that we might not have the illusion of the master, but a real master. Not the illusion of spiritual guidance in satsang, but an actual satsang and sound advice, genuine guidance. And be seeing inner light, not just pressing the eyeballs or staring at a candle and closing one's eyes, or hearing one's refrigerator running in the background and being fooled into thinking they're seeing inner light or hearing inner sound. Sometimes in the news there have been reports about people hearing a mysterious sound that seems to be coming from out of nowhere. One of these has been called the Taos hum. In Philosophy of Liberation, Maharishi Mehi states that not only are there spiritual sounds associated with heavenly realms, but there are also many vibrations or semi-subtle sounds associated with the gross material realm. These would be sort of supernatural sounds coming from beyond the normal range of hearing, and yet aren't really very far along, spiritually speaking. People can hear them, but they shouldn't think or be fooled into believing that they're hearing the higher spiritual sounds. Maharishi Mehi said, one should not falsely assume that they are accessing the real inner sound current just by hearing any kind of sound that may manifest itself to one's perception during the silence of meditation. Some following so-called Western light and sound paths, or meat shabda paths, as I like to call them, also seem to remain without proper guidance on this point. They basically think any old sound's a good sound, any old light is a good light. You know, they have no sense of the full practice of Surat Shabd Yoga. Maharishi Mehi said, there are sounds due to gross vibrations in the material body. To meditate on these gross material sounds and believe it to be the full practice of the yoga of sound, or Surat Shabd Yoga, shows a lack of knowledge of yoga. There are gross material sounds one can hear in the silence of meditation that do not lead one above, do not lead to spiritual growth, transformation, or enlightenment. So once again, it's not just any old sound in meditation, but certain spiritual sounds that the masters have identified and from generation to generation in their initiations have communicated about those important sounds to focus upon in meditation that are associated with the various inner regions or inner planes, not just any old sound that somebody from Arizona or some Western guru or self-proclaimed guru might be saying is all okay, you know, is the same thing as Surat Shabd Yoga. Swami Vyasanand, this is because only the central sound has the power to attract the consciousness to the center and carry the soul to the center of a higher realm. Other illusory material sounds or semi-material sounds do not have that magnetism to attract the consciousness to the higher realms. There are inner sounds that one receives instruction from a true master about at the time of initiation into Surat Shabd Yoga, also called inner sound meditation, or the yoga of the Audible Life stream. These sounds are perceived to come from the right side or center or above and represent the ascending current. Sounds that appear to be coming from the left side are of the descending current flowing downwards into the material creation or multiverse. One is instructed to focus on the sounds of the ascending current or audible life stream, certain sounds that take you above. There are, of course, many other sounds one might hear, but one has to focus on certain sound currents. The reason for this is these sounds, if focused upon during meditation practice, will keep pulling the soul's attention up, further up, to ever higher and higher levels. These are coming from regions above. Other sounds, though mistaken for the sound current, are interesting, kind of miraculous, or even mystical. We all encounter them when we first start meditating on the sound, but they will not help the Surat soul to ascend and make spiritual progress. That's why it's so important to be initiated by a living, competent, true master that will tell you about the sounds, so that you may make spiritual progress, not the illusion of progress or the illusion of Surat Shabd Yoga, but the full practice with all the details as imparted by a true master. You're hearing Spiritual Awakening Radio. My name is James Bean. Coming up after the break, we will continue exploring various teachings, very important points about Surat Shabd Yoga. We'll hear more from Shiv Brat Lal, Maharishi Mehi, Paramhans, and others talking about Surat Shabd Yoga, meditation on the divine sound current, the yoga of the logos, the yoga of the word, the yoga of the sound of God. Stay tuned for more Spiritual Awakening Radio after these messages. Surat Shabd Yoga, Inner Sound Meditation Practice, today on Spiritual Awakening Radio. Earlier I was mentioning that there are so many illusions in this world of samsara and maya. The illusion of having a guru, an illusion of initiation, getting some advice about sound meditation even. One of those illusions is tinnitus. Well, it's a very real ear disease, but it's not to be confused with inner spiritual sound. Some people have tinnitus, a kind of continuous ringing of the ears due to some medical issue or infection pertaining to their ears or eardrum or ear canal, or wax buildup or some damage to their ears. You know, I have a friend that has tinnitus who is an initiate of Sant Mat that practices Surat Shabd Yoga, and they tell me that they can actually tell the difference between their tinnitus sound and the inner spiritual sound, which makes sense actually. They're very different from one another. One is based on consciousness and focusing in meditation, and the other is a disease of the ear, a very different creature, right? A very different kind of sound. They meditate on the inner sound and can tell the difference between inner sound, as in Surat Shabd Yoga practice. They can tell the difference between that sound and the sound of their tinnitus. So there is hope, in other words, for some who are plagued with tinnitus to still make progress with Surat Shabd Yoga meditation. Shiv Brat Lal once said, "The devotee in his spiritual journey upwards hears sweet melodies which attract him. The melodies are a powerful magnetic force which draws the attention inwards and makes it fully attuned to proceed up and up." Maharishi Mehi, in a book I highly recommend, a manual of Sant Mat, called Philosophy of Liberation or Moksha Darshan, said each of the sounds of the centers of the 5 realms possess an attribute to draw the surat, or the consciousness, the attention faculty of the soul, upward to its center. The essential sound, or pure spiritual sound, has the attribute to draw one's consciousness up to the Supreme Sovereign God. The other sounds mentioned above in each of the 5 realms have the attribute to attract the person who hears it or focuses upon it, and to draw that person's surat, or consciousness, the attention faculty of the soul, to the sound of the realm directly above. Further, for the practitioner, the realization of the essential divine sound is impossible without first attaining the sounds of the lower realms. Surat Shabd, the essential divine sound, beckons a return to the Supreme Sovereign God. The progression of sound in all the centers of the realms is upward, carrying one's consciousness from the lower centers to the higher centers, ultimately reaching the Supreme Sovereign God. Philosophy of Liberation by Maharishi Mehi Paramhans. So one starts, as Kirpal Singh mentioned earlier, with the astral bell ringing and conch sound, and progresses through those sounds, and eventually one reaches the Surat Shabd, a higher form of sound. Guru Kabir and many of the Sants of India have poems about the Surat Shabd or Surat Shabda, a higher sound or true nam from far above. In The Inward Journey of the Soul, Swami Vyasanand says the question arises, what is the secret of correct technique for Shabd or sound meditation? Sant Radhasoami said, focus your consciousness stream on inner space. You will find the divine sound which will lead you beyond the snares of this illusory world. Swami Vyasanand said, you should focus your consciousness or inner current in the middle of the eyebrows, the meeting point of the yogic channels, which is known as the 10th gate, Ajna chakra, or third eye. The practitioner will attain one-pointedness through this practice. In other words, the more subtle and most luminous sign of the light realm will appear. With that luminous sign, the inner sound will also manifest. The old approach of the Sant tradition is to have two initiations, actually. First into light and then into sound. The reason for this is one must first be established in the light before they progress onwards to the sound. And it's all very much about avoiding those lower illusory sounds I mentioned earlier. If you don't get established in the light, it's most likely that you'll be hearing the semi-material or lower astral type sounds and think that you've got the practice down when you don't. And so in the classic Sant tradition of India, one must first be established in inner light meditation before they make the switch during their meditation practice, during their meditation sits, to hearing the sound. As Yogani Mataji of the Radhasoami faith once said, listen to the sound that issues forth from the light. That is correct practice in this journey of ascension from light to sound. You're hearing Spiritual Awakening Radio. After the break, I want to delve into the wisdom of Swami Vyasanand, who has a lot to say in his wonderful book called The Inward Journey of the Soul about correct sound meditation practice. You're hearing Spiritual Awakening Radio. My name is James Bean. Stay tuned for more coming up. Surat Shabd Yoga, Inner Sound Meditation Practice, today on Spiritual Awakening Radio. Focusing on not getting distracted by illusory sounds. or illusory forms of sound meditation. But the inner sound meditation practice that causes the soul to ascend, to be drawn up hither into regions above. Swami Vyasanand has a wonderful new book called The Inward Journey of the Soul. It has some guidance about inner sound meditation that has appeared for the first time in the English language that's pretty rare, hard to find otherwise. Present in his new book. Here he quotes a mystic verse of Sant Paltu Sahib. Sant Paltu. Out from that burning light comes the divine sound, and only the one immersed in the samadhi or deep meditative absorption of divine knowledge can hear, none other. Swami Vyasanand, it is the sound that is heard when concentrating on that first mark or sign of light. Due to carelessness, it is possible to also hear the other sounds of the lower realms that have the potential to distract the consciousness current. It is conceivable, then, that the upward ascent of consciousness becomes distracted, thus creating a hindrance in progress. This is because only the central sound has the power to attract the consciousness to the center and carry the soul to the center of a higher realm. Other illusory material sounds do not have that magnetism to attract the consciousness to the higher realms. So here Swami Vyasanand, like Sant Maharishi Mehi earlier, speaks of seeking out correct sounds and not being distracted by the semi-material sounds or lower sounds, the hums and the crickets. I mean, those are doing their thing, and hopefully we'll pass through those on to the higher sounds and not be distracted by them. So certain spiritual sounds draw the soul up hither to regions above, and other semi-material sounds, the hums, the crickets, the lower astral and semi-material sounds, do not do that. He also reiterates the point mentioned earlier about listen to the sound that issues forth from the light, or in other words, in the classic Sant tradition of India, one first is established in inner light meditation, and then from there they proceed on to inner sound meditation in order to get to those higher, more spiritual sounds and not to be misled or, distracted by the material or semi-material sounds. More from Swami Vyasanand. Sant Kabir Sahib, in a verse, once said, "A rare practitioner who abides by the instruction given by the Master listens to the subtle sound of inner space. First, that sound emanates from the ajna chakra, the third eye. A practitioner who can withdraw his mind from the 9 gates of the body and concentrate in the 10th gate or third eye center, he or she alone is able to hear that subtle sound." Sant Tulsi Sahib said, "Enter into the empty space, the inner space, and listen to the sound that is beckoning you toward the divine. This sound has been vibrating since the beginning of creation. If you want to meet your true friend, the Supreme Being, then constantly and carefully listen to that sound. This body is the sacred holy place, the Kaaba, the holiest place in Islam, the true temple, created by the divine. And within it is found the arch, the higher realms of macrocosm beginning from the 10th gate or third eye. It is this inner sanctum within in which is found the divine sound reverberating. O practitioner, listen with full concentration. The sound that originated from the divine is constantly reverberating and calling you. Some mystic sentences from the poetry of Sant Tulsi Sahib of Hathras, quoted by Swami Vyasanand, who said, "Someone must have asked generally, if the sound is not heard with physical ears, then with what kind of ear is this subtle sound heard? When the mind becomes concentrated, then the physical sense of hearing becomes quiet, and one does not hear. This occurs because the attention withdraws from the senses and one is unable to hear physical sound." In response, Sant Tulsi Sahib said, "A practitioner who is able to focus in the 10th gate, or the third eye, for some time will experience the opening of the inner subtle hearing faculty. That inner sense of hearing is also known as the consciousness current. My guru Maharishi Mehi Paramhan said, "A practitioner hears the sweet sound of the flute through the stream of inner consciousness." When the outer ear ceases to hear and the mind is fully concentrated within, then the inner hearing opens up and the practitioner can hear the divine sound within through the inner ear. You're hearing Spiritual Awakening Radio. After the break, we'll continue exploring the section of The Inward Journey of the Soul by Swami Vyasanand on inner sound meditation practice, also known as Surat Shabd Yoga, the yoga of the audible life stream. Meditation upon the Word, the Logos, the music of the spheres. Stay tuned for more Spiritual Awakening Radio coming up. Today on Spiritual Awakening Radio, inner sound meditation, sometimes called Surat Shabd Yoga or Surat Shabd Yoga, Surat Shabd Yoga, the yoga of the audible life stream. Think of the third eye as also the third ear, one's inner hearing. Swami Vyasanand, from his book, The Inward Journey of the Soul, when the outer ear ceases to hear and the mind is fully concentrated within, then the inner hearing opens up and the practitioner can hear the divine sound within through the inner ear. From this, do not infer that a deaf person could not hear the inner sound, because complete concentration is the key, not lack of physical hearing. Just pausing to interject here, yes, if someone is physically deaf, they still can practice Surat Shabd Yoga. Physical hearing is one thing, but the soul has its own inner ears, its own inner faculty of hearing. So someone who is physically deaf is probably at a great advantage, is very, very good at doing Surat Shabd Yoga meditation. Less distractions, right? If someone is physically deaf, yes, they can practice Surat Shabd Yoga. Back to Swami Vyasanand. Sants have articulated about the closing of the three physical gates of the body to experience inner sound. The three gates are eyes, ears, and mouth. Close these, and only then can one hear the inner sounds. Here he is referring to doing a technique that initiates learn how to do to block one's physical ears. And of course we tend to get up early and meditate in a darkened room or in a cave or in a very quiet space, and that's very helpful to practicing Surat Shabd Yoga meditation. Kind of a cave sensory deprivation environment, and that's very useful. Swami Vyasanand I've heard accounts of some practitioners who follow unusual sound meditation practices and claim to hear sounds. However, these gross material sounds are imaginary or generated by metabolic functions or blood circulation. Tinnitus, an ear disease, can also create a sound that can be mistaken for inner divine sound. Some false gurus boast about their imaginary inner experiences of divine light and sound in order to impress their followers, unquote. Once again, we're beating up on the meat shabda gurus of the New Age here, who mislead their followers and sometimes charge money. And, you know, life is short. No decade is worth blowing off. No one should be left behind down some false detour, wasting time because life is too short as it is. Swami Vyasanand, Sant Tulsi Sahib said, "Without the true instruction on the yoga of sound, all efforts are hopeless and vain. Only a Satguru who is accomplished can impart this instruction about the different forms of sound." Therefore, Maharishi Mehi said, practicing sound yoga or inner sound meditation is not child's play. Sant Kabir said, without practice of this sound meditation, man is subject to births and deaths. Therefore, having learned from an accomplished teacher, the practitioner would gain the ability to hear the celestial, not the illusory, sounds. Swami Vyasanand Ji Maharaj in The Inward Journey of the Soul, Chalhansa Nijdesh. Closing of the ears in meditation. The closing of the ears, eyes, and mouth is used to help tune out the distractions caused by the outer senses. It is essential for the purpose of focusing one's gaze at the third eye. Therefore, in the initial stages, it is advised that the practitioner close these three physical senses of sight, hearing, and speaking. Consequently, the mind begins to be focused at the third eye. For those whose consciousness stream has become mature in the power of concentration, it is not necessary to close these three sensory organs. This is due to the fact that the practitioner's mind is focused on the target of the third eye, becomes detached from the senses, and is no longer held by experiences arising from the sensory objects. So here, Swami Vyasanand is saying that you can become more mature in your practice, and you don't always need to be meditating in a cave. You don't always need to use a technique to block your ears in order to focus on the inner sound. You get better at concentrating, and you don't need that perfect environment all of the time. More on the closing of the ears in meditation. Swami Sant Seviji Maharaj in Quintessence of Yoga once said, closing the ears when we hear the divine sound within ourselves is the best approach. There is no harm in it. Here he is referring to a technique that initiates learn to block the physical ears. Sant Seviji Maharaj. We can include this along with the other practices. This practice of inner sound can go on in the night because there is no noise at that time and the environment is peaceful. When the inner sound emerges into the imperishable Supreme Lord, there is absolute soundlessness, the ultimate reality beyond the sound. You may ask, what does it mean to close the ears? There is a technique initiates learn to do just that in order to focus on the inner sound. Also, sometimes people use earplugs to block outer sounds during their sound practice or bhajan. But there is also another level of meaning here. Some clarification is given in the book Harmony of All Religions by Swami Sant Seviji, who states that the closing of the ears is primarily an internal reality that occurs after one's awareness or attention has gone within. When you focus your gaze within the ajna chakra or third eye, then automatically your physical ears will close and the inner ears will open, says Swami Sant Seviji Maharaj. So he has mentioned, as other masters have, both that you have a technique that you can use to block your physical ears, That's something that initiates learn as part of their initiation into Surat Shabd Yoga. But after a while, you may not need it. You can concentrate very successfully and will find that the world of the outer senses will recede from you and the inner sound will manifest, that your outer hearing will tend to close off all by itself as you develop concentration within and hear the inner sound. My name is James Bean. This has been Spiritual Awakening Radio, today talking about Surat Shabd Yoga, the reality and not the illusion of hearing the inner sound. Say hello by sending me an email if you like. My address is james@spiritualawakeningradio.com. james@spiritualawakeningradio.com, or send me a text message at this number, 508-603-9381, 508-603-9381, and visit my website, spiritualawakeningradio.com. Tune in again next week at the same time for another edition of Spiritual Awakening Radio.